so when we are doing overlay mosaic crochet, we are going to need two colours. So I've got my colour 1 and colour 2. Just you need to keep a reasonable contrast to be able to see the pattern properly. There is a way of doing mosaic crochet just in one colour or in very similar colours to get the texture, but for what we're doing here we're going to need contrast that you can actually see the difference. So you know, I've got this lovely sort of peachy colour and a cream. Okay, so what I've now done, oh, you're going to need your scissors because we're going to be cutting the yarn at the end of every row, so make sure you've got your scissors nice and handy. I've just started here with 24 chains, so the pattern repeat for all of the, it's basically the same basic design for all of the tutorials, all of the mosaic crochet tutorials I've done, which has a basic repeat of a multiple of 6 stitches, and for most of them I've just added 3 more on, so that's like 2 edge stitches and then an extra one just to keep the pattern nice and balanced. And you can do the overlay like this. Most people will have 1 edge stitch and then the pattern in between, so that would be your multiple of 6 plus 3. What I've done though, this is actually, I've just recently developed a new method for doing an envelope border. If you're not familiar with overlay mosaic, you might not realise, but because you get lots and lots of ends in your overlay mosaic, you can either leave them as they are as a fringe, or a lot of people will do an envelope border, which is beautiful. It really tidies up the edges, gives it a nice sort of weight, but it can be a little bit tricky to pick up those stitches for it. So I've developed a new way where the pickup for the envelope border is actually really easy, but to do that you're going to need a chain between your edge stitches and the main pattern. So that's why when you actually look at the tutorial for the overlay mosaic, I've actually added 2 extra chains on the starting chain and basically 2 extra stitches on my chart, and that is just for that chain. You can do that with any overlay mosaic design. Just remember that if they haven't already talked about the chain in the pattern, you're just going to need to add a chain between the edge or border stitch, sometimes it's called, and the main pattern. So anyway, I've now started, as I said, with 24 chains. The first of which is a turning chain, so we're going to end up with effectively 23 stitches. Okay, so and then the important thing to do when you want to, if you want to do the sort of easy envelope border, you do need to make sure you don't work into this front loop of the chain, but you work into the back bump, sort of line that goes across there, because we need to leave both of these loops free for our border. I'll explain more about that later, but basically, like I said, I've now got my 24 chains, so I'm going to start by twisting that chain round and making my first double crochet. So miss that first one because that's a turning chain. Make our first double crochet edge or border stitch, but it's a double crochet into that very first chain, well, the second chain, but that becomes our first stitch. And now what we do, as I said, is a chain, just 1 chain. We're going to miss this next chain, and then you're going to need to do your double crochets into this back bump all the way along until you've just got 2 chains left. Okay, so I've now got 2 chains left. So we've got to remember to do basically the mirror image of what we did at the start here. I'm just going to do 1 chain, miss that second from last chain, and just pop a double crochet right in that final chain. So if you're doing this tutorial, what you should have is 1 double crochet, 1 chain space, and 19 double crochets, 1 chain space, and 1 double crochet. Now what you can do, if you're finding it a little bit tricky to see where those chains are, what we can do is just pop a little marker in there. So just excuse me while I pick up a couple. So just going to pop a marker, there we go, just into that front loop of that first chain. and another one in. There we go. Let me take my hook out of there so I can pick it up. You can see there's a chain space. We're just going to pop that marker in there. Okay. Okay, so I've just now fastened off my colour 1, and now it's time to join colour 2. So to do that, I always start with a standing double crochet. So when you're doing a double crochet, a standing stitch rather, you need a slip knot on your hook to start with, because we've got to make sure it's nice and secure. So how I do a slip knot, it's probably not the proper way, but it works. So if you see, I've got the end there. This is the bit that's attached to the ball of yarn. So just twist that around and then pull a loop through and then just pull that tight. So it works to me like a slip knot. Okay, so now you've got that nice secure knot on your hook. You just basically pop double crochet in this first stitch. Okay, so then what we're going to do, I'm going to do a chain. So this will be the same at the start of every single row if you're going to be using my my method for the envelope border, where you just add this extra chain. If you're following another pattern that doesn't have that chain in and you don't want to do an envelope border, then it's absolutely fine. You just go straight into the pattern. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we've got one chain. We're going to miss this chain which we marked, and then we're going to basically do a row of double crochets into those back loops only. So you're just working into the back loop all the way along until we get to that next chain. So double crochet, whoops, there we go. So you can see what that's doing is now leaving us this little line here, which is the front loops, which we're going to need when we start creating our pattern. Okay, so standard double crochet, but you just work into that back loop. So do that all the way along until you get to our chain at the end. Yeah, so I've now got to that chain, which I very helpfully put a marker in, so it's a good idea probably to keep doing that. So now we do chain. We're going to miss that chain that we've done there, and we're just going to put our last edge stitch in that last stitch there. Okay, and then we can just fasten off again. So there we go. So you may find it helpful to carry on putting markers in those chains. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to find, I think it'll be easier for me to sort of show you how it looks at the end without doing it. But by all means do, and you might find it helpful if you do that, certainly sort of the beginning and maybe on the last row, because you're going to need that when we come to do the border. So leave those markers in there. There we are. Okay, so far our overlay mosaic isn't very exciting, is it? But we're now actually going to start adding some pattern. So I'm going to start again with my colour 1. So slip knot on my hook, double crochet in the very first stitch there, and then one chain, and we're going to miss this chain here. Okay, so now we start with one back loop double crochet, and now the repeat is 2 back loop double crochets, 1, 2, 1 front loop treble. So we're working, that's why we left those front loops there, so we can make our pattern there by dropping the treble down into there. Okay, and then make sure we miss this stitch behind. Okay, so don't work into that one. We've now got to do 3 back loop double crochets. So that's all we're repeating. So we end that repeat there with 3 back loop double crochets, and we start the next one with 2 more. 1, 2. So obviously that gives us 5 back loop double crochets in a row, and then make sure drop down there. You can see we need to make our front loop treble, and that's stitched 2 rows below there. Okay, so then 1, 2, 3 back loop double crochets to end that repeat. Start the next one with 2 more. 2, 1 treble 2 rows down into that front loop, then 1, 2, 3 back loop double crochets to end that repeat. And we've now got to, you can see that, our chain space again. So it's 1 chain, miss the chain, and then pop your double crochet in that last stitch. Okay, so that's what it looks like there. So we know that is how you create the pattern with Overlay Mosaic Crochet. It's as simple as that. So what I'm now going to do, fasten that off. There we go. And we'll then be able to do the next pattern row. Okay, so for row 4, again, we're going to start with a standing double crochet in that first stitch. So that's, every row is going to start the same. 1 double crochet, 1 chain, and then miss this chain. So now we're going to start straight away with 1 treble, front loop treble 2 rows down. So right next to this chain that we're missing there, pop a front loop treble in there. Okay, now we've just got to do 5 back loop double crochets, 3, 4, 5, and then we end our repeat with another front loop treble in there. Okay, so that's all we're now going to do across. 5 back loop double crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 front loop treble. Okay, and we'll end that with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back loop double crochets, and right next to this chain we're going to be missing, so right on that last stitch of the pattern there, we've got our front loop treble. Okay, and then remember, 1 chain, miss this chain, and then end with a double crochet at the end and fasten off. Okay, so I've now just started row 5 with my double crochet and then 1 chain. So that's the way we start every row, isn't it? So now what we've got to do before the main repeat starts, we've got to put, so again we've got to make sure we miss this chain, and then it'll be a double crochet in there. Okay, so then the repeat starts with 2 front loop trebles. So put them into those unused loops 2 rows down. Oops, get my marker out of the way. Then 1 back loop double crochet. So that's what we're going to be repeating across. 1, 2 front loop trebles 2 rows down, 1 double crochet. So we'll keep doing that until we get to that space at the end of the row again. So just end with 2 front loop trebles 2 rows down, and 1 back loop double crochet, and then all we've got left now is our chain and our final edge stitch. So we're going to do 1 chain, make sure we miss the chain, and then work our edge stitch in there, and then fasten off. Oops, if I can get my scissors in there. Okay. So I've just now started row 6 with my edge stitch, so the double crochet through both loops and that initial chain, and then obviously we've got to miss this chain, and now basically we're going to do exactly the same as we did down here on row 4. So we get on a start with our treble in that front loop, and then it's 5 back loop double crochets. Just going to repeat that all the way across. So there is our last front loop treble 2 rows down before we now get to the chain and the edge stitch. So again is 1 chain, miss the chain, and pop your DC double crochet in the end there, fasten off. Okay, so that is basically what we're going to repeat. You just need to repeat rows 3, 4, 5 and 6 until you get to the height that you want, and then when you've done that, once you've got to as far, you know, so your piece is as long as you want it to be, just remember to just do row 3 once more, and that will be that. So I'll just come and show you what it looks like.